I can't tell a waltz from a tango, darling, when I dance with you.
Welcome to episode 4 of our series, Music Recognition for Ballroom Dancers. In previous episodes, we talked about melody, rhythm, meter, and tempo. Now we're going to talk about something a little more subjective, style or genre. We all know that there are different kinds of music. We also know that it can be difficult to articulate the differences or even agree on the divisions of music. I'm not going to get into this debate except as it is necessary and useful for recognizing ballroom dance music. While it's possible to dance to trip-hop, acid house, or nerdcore, we will talk about the most popular genres found in the ballroom world. So what are the styles we're going to talk about? Number 1, classical or orchestral. Number 2, jazz. Number 3, rock. Number 4, pop or electronic. And number 5, Latin. This series is for ballroom dancers, and is from a 21st century American context. Obviously, there are many subgenres. We're entirely ignoring indigenous Asian and African music, for instance, and Latin is grossly oversimplified and encompasses Brazilian, South American, Caribbean, as well as anglicized forms of all. So, how can we classify these styles? How do we recognize them? What components will we look at? Number 1 is instrumentation, such as the percussion. Is there minimal percussion, traditional Latin, such as bongo, conga, etc., drum set, or electronic? Other, brass, strings, guitar, electrified, synthesizer. For example, if you hear a banjo, there's a pretty good chance that it'll be country or roots music or blues, rather than classical or Latin. We'll also look at stress patterns. Mainly, does it have a downbeat or backbeat, offbeat, or more complicated? We'll get into definitions a little bit later. The syncopation of the beat. What do I mean by that? Well, for musicians, syncopation refers to any variation of the established rhythm. However, I'm using another definition, which is a rhythm that is not a full or half beat, but rather slightly ahead or slightly behind the beat. We'll get into this more as well. And finally, the vocal style. So this is not quite as reliable as some of the others, but pop and classical vocalists are usually trying to sound pretty or beautiful, as well as powerful and precise, while rock vocalists are usually trying to sound raw and authentic. Jazz vocalists can be both, beautiful and heartrending, but also raw or even playful. Obviously, Latin music is predominantly in Spanish or Brazilian Portuguese, so that also can be a hint. So, first let's look at classical or orchestral music. The dances that we associate with those would be slow waltz, Viennese waltz, polka, and tango, right? Our oldest ballroom dances, all having their roots in the 19th century. Orchestral music can be classified as music using traditional Western, unamplified instruments, such as strings, brass, piano, etc. It can be a single piano or an entire orchestra. It also tends to have a low percussion ratio. For example, the London Symphony Orchestra lists 59 members in the string section, but only 4 percussionists. It's not uncommon to have a single percussionist in an 80-person orchestra. Polka and tango orchestras often employ an instrument not seen in other orchestras, and that is the accordion or bandeon. The invention of the accordion coincides with the popularity of the polka and greatly influenced the growth of the tango. Generally speaking, if you hear an accordion at a ballroom dance, it will be a tango, if slow, and a polka, if fast. 2. Jazz. The ballroom dances that we associate with jazz music would be Quickstep, Foxtrot, Lindy Hop, Peabody. Jazz has a strongly syncopated feeling and usually has a lot of improvisation. To hear the difference, here's a folk version of the famous song Moscow Nights and a jazz version. First, the folk version. Now, the jazz version. Hear the difference? You'll notice that the jazz version has brass rather than folk instruments, and has a backbeat or accents on the 2 and 4 rather than the 1 and 3. It also plays around with the melody more. The Swingle singers are famous for turning classical tunes into jazzy covers. Here's another example, starting with the original Bizet. And here's the jazz version. The most obvious differences are the instrumentation and emphasis on the backbeat with the claps, changing it from a stern march to a bouncy step. Well, we're going to stop here for now, and next week we will pick up and finish off the rest of the genres, rock, pop, and Latin. See you next week.